First on the agenda today is Senate Bill 424. Adam, can you give us a briefing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 424 would establish the Kansas Plain Coordinate System Act. This act would revise the current Kansas coordinate system that was established for defining and stating the geographic positions or locations of points on the surface of the earth within the state of Kansas. The bill clarifies that the Kansas Plain Coordinate System Act shall not be construed to prohibit the appropriate use of other datums and other geodetic reference networks established by a state agency or county, such as the Kansas Regional Coordinate System, which was developed and implemented by the Kansas Department of Transportation and is based upon the North American datum of 1983. The Kansas Plain Coordinate System shall be named as a requirement in any land description in which it is used. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Committee questions for Adam? Seeing none, thank you. First up, we have proponents. Catherine Magana. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the committee, Mr. Chairman. My name is Catherine Magana, Legislative Policy Analyst and Liaison for the Kansas Department of Transportation, and I'm here today to provide testimony proponent on Senate Bill 424. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and to provide comments today. KDOT is proud to share that we were able to work on the proposed legislation and prepare it with a group of stakeholders statewide, including the Kansas Society of Land Surveyors, Kansas Association of Mappers, and other groups, including the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration staff and the National Geodetic Survey, or NOAA and NGS. The collaboration was able to result in this initiative to keep Kansas in line with federal standards and improve the capacity and the efficiency of the statewide surveying professionals. The proposed updates to the Kansas statutes are meant to update the planned statutes for the federal government's scheduled for 2025 update relating to the surveying and mapping reference systems, and the definition in units of measurement is meant to bring us up to the proposed federal updates. The Kansas Regional Coordinate System, funded and developed by the Kansas Department of Transportation in 2017, will be the base surveying system for the NOAA and NGS coordinate system. This new development by the federal government will afford more uniform surveying and mapping reference systems that don't rely on independent mapping projections by surveying professionals in the state. It has been 40 years since the system of 1983 was implemented, so the new basis would not only provide the necessary update for the current plain coordinate system, but it would also further account for the implementation of any future coordinate system by just creating the title Kansas Plain Coordinate System instead of giving it a yearly designation. The proposed statutes can be implemented within KDOT's existing budget limits and require no additional budget increases to the agency or the state. On behalf of KDOT, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony and the answers to any questions you may have at this time.
Committee questions? Seeing none, thank you. Next up, we have Bill Haverkamp. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Peterson and the chair and the committee. I'm Bill Haverkamp. I'm a land surveyor here in Topeka. I also serve on the Kansas Society of Land Surveyors Board of Directors. We are in support of this bill, and as Catherine shared, this was presented or developed by a stakeholders group across the state, a number of different folks: Kansas Department of Transportation, Kansas Society of Land Surveyors, Kansas Association of Mappers, the GIS Policy Board, and the Kansas Geological Survey, along with NOAA and the National Geodetic Survey. And what this bill ultimately does is it brings our current statutes in alignment with the new federal datum, the federal datum of 2022 that they hope to introduce in 2025. So some of the key thoughts we had was we made this current language coexist with the current state plane coordinate system and any future coordinate system. So as the federal government defines the shape of the earth in the next century, you know, they'll have different datums that develop over time. This bill will adopt and accept those datums as they move forward. So this should not have to be revisited ever again. So it's revenue neutral. No one needs to do anything. It just accomplishes the goal of codifying the different datums that we have in Kansas. And with that, I will entertain any questions you may have and not be too redundant with the testimony you just heard.
Committee questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have James Meese.
Good morning, James Mice, land surveyor, also on the Kansas Society of Land Surveyors Board of Directors. I have no further comments to add besides what Bill has already provided, but if there are any questions, I'll attempt to answer.
Any questions for James? Seeing none, this hearing is going smooth.
Thank you, Senators.
Next up, Larry Carnes.
Good morning, Senator Peterson, members of the committee. My name's Larry Carnes. I'm the Executive Director of the Kansas Board of Technical Professions. We license engineers, architects, land surveyors, geologists, and landscape architects. I can't speak to the technical aspects of this bill because this is kind of over my head, actually, but I can tell you that Mr. Haverkamp is on our board. Last week we had a board meeting. He explained the board to our board members, and all 11 of our board members were in support of this bill, and the Board of Technical Professions lends its support to the bill as well. I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Committee questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Sir, thank you.
Next up, Ken Nelson. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all this morning. My name is Ken Nelson. I'm a geographic information systems professional. I work at the Geological Survey located at the University of Kansas, where I serve as Associate Director for GIS and Information Technology. In that role, I also oversee the activities of our program called the Data Access and Support Center, which is the little logo in the upper right corner of my written testimony. Data Access and Support Center, or DASC, serves as our state GIS data clearinghouse, and through that program we have the opportunity to work with many state GIS and mapping programs within state government and across local government as well. So the state plane coordinate system is commonly used, especially at the local level, to represent data such as parcel or property ownership boundaries, planning and zoning, transportation, address locations, and the like, in support of many different projects, including our state Next Generation 911 system. So we feel like this is a logical evolution to modify the legislation to adopt the pending changes from the National Geodetic Survey. And this is also consistent with a national trend. So I serve on a professional association called the National States Geographic Information Council. The opportunity to interact with state GIS program managers, and this legislation is consistent with what is going on in other state programs as well, to sort of adopt the forthcoming changes from NGS and to future-proof that legislation, as Mr. Haverkamp said, so it doesn't have to be revisited every time there's an update. That's a summary of my written testimony, and I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Committee questions? I have one. Do we know how many other states have adopted this?
I don't know how many have adopted the legislation. I know they're all in progress, either have adopted or will adopt. This will be very common across the mapping professional, but I don't have that specific count. I could certainly get that information for you, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. I'll see if anybody in the audience might have it. Step up and state your name again.
Bill Haverkamp. I know Missouri adopted this last year in their legislation, and I think I've counted about 8 states, as we tried to get reference legislation from other states so we could kind of have something to work from. And so I know at least 8 to 9 states have done it thus far. And it's probably, this is an optimum year for us because they're going to adopt it or promote it in 2025 through their NGS and NOAA. So we're kind of getting ahead of the game. Maybe some of the other states are waiting for that to happen, but we're trying to be a little bit proactive, if you would. So,
Excellent, thank you. Committee, any further questions for Ken? Senator Reddy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if it's for you or if it's for anybody else in the audience. So this seems you want to align it with the federal standards, is my understanding. How is this different than national? You know, we get a lot of engineers and such that move from one country or getting their education here. Is the international one different than the national? If the state and national are different, I'm assuming so.
Probably a better question for one of the survey engineers in the group here. So, sorry to punt it your way.
James Mice, land surveyor. So the federal standard, what we've used in the past, geodetically speaking, we had our own definition of the center of the Earth and how the coordinates on the surface of the Earth were mapped. The international standard is a little bit different. So what the NGS is doing is they're adopting the International Terrestrial Reference Frame. So that's the international standard for the definition of the Earth and how you define coordinates on it, so latitude, longitude. So now the federal standard will match the international standard, and we are going to match the federal standard. So everything's going to align with each other.
Thank you for your response. That makes sense to me. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I've always have concern over this when they tie us to federal standards, just because they tried to do this with the fire department a few years ago, and it would have been over and above what was needed for Kansas. I'm not saying these guidelines aren't, but is there federal money tied to this, that if we do align with them, that there's funds that are tied to this? No.
I don't believe so. Yeah.
Okay. I know these guys are looking at me like, oftentimes they have us jump through hoops for federal regulations. Meat processing plants is a great example. In order to get federal funds, we have to put language in order to get those funds. And I was just wondering if there was anything tied to this.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, great. You just think it's good to line up then?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Committee, further questions?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
See none, thank you. That concludes our proponents. Are there any neutrals? Are there any opponents? We'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 424. Open the hearing on Senate Bill 399. Adam?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 399 would move 2 dates from the current 20th day of the month to the 25th day of the month when reports are due to the Division of Vehicles. These reports would include the listing of vehicle sales or transfer reports of vehicle dealers and salvage vehicle dealers, vehicle crushers, vehicle recyclers, rebuilders, scrap metal recyclers, and salvage vehicle pools, listing all vehicles for which the major component part containing the vehicle information or engine number, if manufactured prior to 1981, has been disposed of or sold. So instead of the report being due on the 20th of each month, it'll now be due on the 25th. With that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Committee, any questions for Adam? Seeing none, thank you, Adam. First up, we have our very own Senator Bowers.
Good morning. Happy Valentine's Day. So before I start, I want to introduce some guests in the back, if you don't mind. We have Leadership Mitchell County with us, who have been coming, Doug, how many years? Probably 24 years.
We asked them to stand.
Yes, can you all stand, everyone? So all my friends from Beloit.
It's just a third of the overall group, 22.
And my daughter-in-law, Hannah, is in the red. So she gets to see her mother-in-law work. So Well, thank you, Adam. He described the bill just perfectly, but I'll give you a little more background. I see I am the only person on the agenda, but just to ease everyone's mind, I have ran the traps with the Department of Revenue, with the Dealer Review Board, KADA, making sure there was no opponents to this, and it makes sense, I think, as you go along with me. But I did find an interesting fact when I asked how many active dealers there are in Kansas, and it's 2340. That's a good amount of dealers. I didn't know that number, but I wanted to tell you what a dealer was first. It constitutes a person who purchases a vehicle with the intent to sell for profit and sells 5 or more vehicles within a calendar year. Doing business as a vehicle manufactured home dealer or salesperson in the state of Kansas requires a license issued by the Kansas Department of Revenue Dealer Licensing. So when we apply for our license each year, we have to meet certain requirements, and that includes having our insurance current, local zoning requirements met, a tax clearance, and all of our reports current. So each month, 2 reports are required, and one is the submission of vehicle sales for the month, which is due on the 20th, and what I'm proposing is moving it to the 25th, and one report which submits sales tax collected for these sales, which is due on the 25th. And as I've prepared and submitted these reports for over 30 years, I've always wondered why these dates weren't the same and have one date for both. As I researched with the dealer licensing division within the Department of Revenue, I learned these dates are in statute, cannot be modified administratively or in rules and regs, and a law must be passed to combine the dates. By moving the vehicle sales report date to the 25th, when the sales tax report is due and remittance is due, would put both reports on the same day for easier bookkeeping. So as I mentioned, I checked with the Department of Revenue, found no opposition to this, and I think it just simplifies the process to a one-day submission for both reports without disrupting the sales dollars reported on the 25th. So this is my proposal, Mr. Chairman, and I believe this is so simple that we could put this on the consent calendar when the time is right. So I'm ready for any questions. And my former friend who worked in the department probably sees the logic in this as well. So,
any questions? See none. Looks like you got off easy.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate this. It's just something that I've always thought, why aren't we doing it with one date? Just more simple. So by the time you realize the 25th is coming along, you say, did I do it on the 20th? And say, yes, I did. So that just make it simple for the controllers. I believe this suits it fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any further proponents? Any neutrals? Any opponents? Committee, now for the bad news. Looks like we will be working Monday. But that's a good thing. Get our work done. I should have put another bill on today if I'd have known it's going to go this smooth. They do sound like some consent calendar bills when it comes time to working with no further business. Oh, Senator Reddy, do you have anything? See no further business coming before the committee. We are adjourned.